Imagine this. A campaign is performing extremely well. Leads are coming in, ROAS looks strong. The client is happy, so naturally, the budget gets increased. At first, everything still looks stable. But then something changes. Conversions start dropping, cost starts rising, and suddenly, the campaign that was working perfectly starts breaking apart. Now the pressure becomes real because the client is asking questions. Why did performance drop? What changed? Why are we spending more but getting worse results? And now every decision feels dangerous. If you keep scaling, performance might collapse even more. If you reduce the budget too quickly, momentum disappears completely. Now something becomes clear. There is no comfortable decision anymore. And that is where real pressure begins. Because now, every move can either stabilize the campaign or make the situation worse. And suddenly, you are no longer managing a campaign. You are managing a crisis. This is the part most candidates are never prepared for. Because learning marketing is one thing, but staying calm while performance collapses is completely different. And that is exactly what separates beginner thinking from advanced execution thinking. And in this video, that is exactly what we are going to work on. Now here's something most candidates don't realize about campaign crises. The real problem is not just the performance drop itself. It's how people react when pressure suddenly increases. Let's imagine this situation. A campaign starts failing after scaling. The client is frustrated. Results are unstable. And now, everyone wants quick answers immediately. At first, many marketers panic internally because they feel forced to fix everything fast. So they start making rapid decisions. Change the targeting, change the creatives, reduce the budget, and suddenly, too many things are changing at once. Now something important happens. The campaign becomes even harder to understand because now no one knows which change actually affected performance. And slowly, pressure keeps increasing instead of decreasing. This is where advanced execution thinking becomes different. Instead of reacting emotionally, you slow the situation down and regain clarity first. You identify the biggest issue. You isolate the most important variable. And only then, you begin making controlled adjustments. Now something changes. The campaign becomes manageable again. Because in real crisis situations, calm thinking creates recovery. Panic creates deeper problems. Now think about your own approach. Are you reacting quickly under pressure or slowing the situation down enough to make better decisions? Before we move deeper into recovery scenarios, it's important to understand how advanced marketers think during campaign pressure. Because this is where many people lose control of the situation. Let's imagine this. Performance suddenly drops after scaling. The client wants answers quickly. Budget is still running. And now the pressure starts building from every direction. At first, many marketers focus only on fixing the results immediately. But then something important happens. Fast reactions without clarity create even more instability. Now imagine changing multiple things too quickly. Performance changes again. But now the real problem becomes harder to identify. And slowly, the campaign turns into confusion instead of recovery. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Instead of chasing fast fixes, you focus on restoring clarity first. What changed before the drop? Which variable likely affected performance most? What data still looks stable? Now something changes. The situation becomes easier to analyze logically. And once clarity returns, recovery decisions become much stronger because in real campaign crises, the first priority is not speed, it is regaining control of the situation. Now think about your own approach. Are you reacting to pressure immediately or rebuilding clarity before making major decisions? Now let's move into one of the most stressful situations in paid advertising. A campaign has been performing consistently for weeks. ROAS looks healthy. Leads are stable. And then suddenly, performance drops hard. Cost increases. Conversions slow down. And the client immediately asks you, "What happened? At first, this creates panic for many marketers because the campaign was already working. Nothing obvious changed. And now, the pressure to explain the drop becomes immediate. Many candidates make the same mistake here. They try to explain the problem too quickly. Maybe the audience changed. Maybe the platform changed. Maybe the creative stopped working. But then something important happens. Assumptions start replacing analysis. Now the situation becomes even more unstable. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Instead of rushing to explain, you slow the investigation down. What changed before the drop? Did scaling affect delivery? Did frequency increase too much? Now something changes. The recovery process becomes logical instead of emotional. Because in real campaigns, sudden performance drops require diagnosis first, not panic explanations. Now think about your own approach. Are you trying to explain the problem immediately? Or analyzing the situation carefully before reacting? Now let's look at another crisis that frustrates many clients. At first, the campaign performs well. Leads are coming in consistently. The client feels confident, but then something changes. The quality of leads suddenly starts dropping. Now the client becomes frustrated because even though leads are still coming in, conversions are no longer happening. And the interviewer asks you, what could be causing this? At first, many marketers focus only on lead volume. They see numbers still coming in, so they assume the campaign is healthy. But the real business results tell a different story. Targeting becomes too broad. The messaging attracts low-intent users. And slowly, the campaign starts generating weaker leads instead of better customers. Lead numbers still look strong, but actual sales keep falling. This is where advanced execution thinking changes. Instead of focusing only on cost per lead, you start analyzing buying intent and conversion quality. Who is actually converting? Which audience still has strong intent? Now recovery becomes focused on business outcomes again. Because in real campaigns, cheap leads become expensive if they never convert. Now think about your own approach. Are you optimizing for lead volume only, or for real business results and conversion quality? Now let's look at one of the most common mistakes during successful campaigns. A campaign starts performing well. ROAS is strong. Leads are increasing. And naturally, the client wants to scale faster. So the budget gets increased aggressively. At first, this feels exciting because higher budget should mean more results. But then something happens. Performance suddenly becomes unstable. Costs rise quickly. Conversions slow down. And now the interviewer asks you, why can scaling damage a campaign? At first, many marketers assume more budget simply increases reach, but real campaign systems don't always scale smoothly. Now imagine this situation. The platform suddenly pushes ads to colder audiences. Frequency changes too quickly, and slowly, the campaign loses the balance it had before scaling. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Instead of scaling aggressively, you scale in controlled stages. You monitor performance carefully. You watch how the system reacts before increasing further. Now something changes. Scaling becomes sustainable instead of unstable. Because in real campaigns, fast growth without control can destroy performance. Now think about your own approach. Are you scaling emotionally because results look exciting, or scaling carefully to protect long-term performance? Now let's look at a situation where campaign pressure becomes emotional very quickly. Performance starts dropping unexpectedly. ROAS falls, conversions slow down, and now the client begins panicking. They start asking urgent questions. Should we stop the campaign? Are we losing money? At first, many marketers panic internally too. Because now, the pressure is not only about performance anymore. It's about protecting the client's confidence. And this is where many candidates make a mistake. They react emotionally to match the client's fear. They start making rush changes or promise quick recovery too early. But emotional reactions create even more instability. Now the client becomes more uncertain. The campaign becomes harder to manage. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Instead of reacting emotionally, you stabilize the situation first. You explain what is happening clearly. You focus on the most reliable data. And instead of promising instant recovery, you focus on controlled next steps. Now something changes. The client feels calmer. Recovery decisions become more structured. Because in real campaign crises, controlling emotions is part of controlling performance. Now think about your own approach. Are you absorbing panic under pressure? Or helping stabilize the situation before making decisions? Now let's look at a problem that becomes more common as campaigns grow larger. A business starts running multiple campaigns at the same time. Different audiences, different offers, different objectives. At first, this feels like growth, because more campaigns should create more opportunities. But then something starts going wrong. Performance becomes unstable across all campaigns. Costs increase unexpectedly. Results become inconsistent. And now the interviewer asks you, what could be causing this? At first, many marketers focus on each campaign separately. But then something important becomes clear. The campaigns may actually be competing against each other. Now imagine this situation. Multiple campaigns target similar audiences. The platform starts splitting delivery. Data becomes less efficient. And slowly, campaigns begin weakening each other instead of improving results. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Instead of scaling endlessly, you start simplifying and consolidating strategically. You reduce overlap. You clarify campaign purpose. You prioritize the strongest performing structure. Now something changes. Performance becomes more stable again. Budget efficiency improves. Because in real campaign systems, more complexity does not always create better results. Now think about your own approach. Are you adding more campaigns under pressure? Now let's look at one of the most uncomfortable situations in digital marketing. A campaign is underperforming. ROAS is down. Leads are weaker. Results are below expectations. And now, you have to report those results to the client. At first, many marketers fear this moment because no one wants to deliver bad news. And this is where many candidates make a mistake. They try to hide the seriousness of the problem. They avoid difficult conversations, or they focus only on positive metrics. But then something important happens. Unclear reporting creates even more distrust. Now the client feels confused, and slowly, confidence starts breaking down. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Instead of avoiding the problem, you communicate the situation honestly and strategically. You explain what is underperforming. You explain what is still stable. And most importantly, you explain the recovery plan clearly. Now something changes. The conversation becomes solution-focused instead of emotional. Because in real campaigns, bad results are sometimes unavoidable. But unclear communication damages trust even faster. Now think about your own approach. Are you trying to hide weak performance under pressure? Or creating trust through clarity, honesty, and recovery planning? Now let's look at a situation that frustrates many experienced marketers. A campaign has been performing consistently for a long time. Results feel predictable. Optimization feels stable. And then suddenly, platform performance changes unexpectedly. Costs increase. Reach drops. Conversions become inconsistent. And the interviewer asks you, what would you do in this situation? At first, many marketers assume they made a mistake. They immediately start changing campaigns aggressively. But then something important happens. The instability becomes even worse. Now imagine this situation. The platform algorithm changes delivery behavior. Audience behavior shifts unexpectedly. And suddenly, old optimization patterns stop working the same way. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Instead of reacting aggressively, you first confirm whether the instability is temporary or structural. You compare trends. You analyze broader performance signals. And instead of forcing constant changes, you make controlled adjustments based on reliable patterns. Now something changes. the campaign becomes easier to stabilize again. Because in real digital advertising, platforms evolve constantly, and overreacting to short-term instability can damage long-term performance. Now think about your own approach. Are you reacting emotionally to sudden platform shifts, or analyzing whether the system needs patience, adaptation, or controlled optimization? At this point, something important should become very clear. Most campaign crises are not destroyed by the original problem itself. They become worse because of emotional decision-making under pressure. Let's imagine a situation. Performance suddenly drops. The client becomes anxious, budget is still running, and now every decision feels urgent. At first, many marketers react emotionally. They rush changes. They panic optimize, because doing something feels safer than slowing down. But then something important happens. Fast emotional decisions create even more instability. Now the campaign becomes harder to analyze. Recovery becomes slower. And slowly, pressure keeps growing instead of improving. This is where advanced execution thinking becomes different. Instead of reacting emotionally, strong marketers create structure before action. They identify what changed first. They isolate the biggest variable. And then they recover step by step. Now something changes. The situation becomes manageable again. Because in real campaign crises, calm thinking creates recovery. Panic creates deeper damage. Now think about your own approach. Are you reacting emotionally when pressure increases, or slowing the situation down enough to regain control first? Now let's talk about the skill that becomes most important during campaign pressure. Decision clarity. Because during stable campaigns, many marketers feel confident. Results look predictable. Optimization feels easier. But crisis situations change everything. Now imagine this. Performance suddenly becomes unstable. The client wants fast answers. Budget pressure increases. And now every decision feels risky. At first, many marketers try to remove uncertainty completely before acting. But then something important happens. Campaign systems rarely become perfectly clear during pressure. And this is where many people get stuck. They delay decisions too long, or they keep searching for perfect certainty. But while hesitation continues, the campaign keeps moving. Budget keeps spending. Performance keeps shifting. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Instead of waiting for perfect certainty, strong marketers learn how to make controlled decisions with incomplete information. They reduce risk carefully. They monitor changes closely. And step by step, they regain stability without reacting emotionally. Because in real campaign crises, certainty is rarely perfect, but clear decision-making still matters. Now think about your own approach. Are you waiting too long for perfect clarity, or learning how to make calm decisions, even when uncertainty still exists? Now let's look at another difficult reality of campaign recovery. Sometimes, recovery takes longer than expected. At first, many marketers assume good decisions should create fast improvement, but real campaign systems don't always recover immediately. Now imagine this situation. You identify the problem correctly. You make controlled optimizations, but performance still improves slowly. And now the pressure starts building again. The client becomes impatient. Results still feel unstable. And suddenly, doubt starts returning. At this stage, many marketers make a mistake. They abandon the recovery process too early. They start changing direction again, hoping faster action will speed up recovery. But then something important happens. Instability increases all over again, because the system never had enough time to stabilize properly. This is where advanced execution thinking changes completely. Strong marketers understand the difference between slow recovery and failed recovery. They continue monitoring the right signals. They avoid unnecessary emotional changes. And step by step, they allow stable optimization to rebuild performance gradually. Because in real campaign crises, recovery is not always immediate, but emotional impatience can delay it even more. Now think about your own approach. Are you abandoning recovery too quickly under pressure? or allowing stable decisions enough time to work properly. So at this point, something important should become very clear. The biggest difference between beginner marketers and experienced marketers is not knowledge alone. It is how they behave when pressure increases. Let's imagine a crisis situation. Performance becomes unstable. The client becomes emotional. Results stop looking predictable. At first, everyone feels pressure. Even experienced marketers do. But then something changes. Beginners usually react emotionally to uncertainty. They rush decisions. They panic optimize. They search for instant recovery. Because emotionally, doing something quickly feels safer than staying patient. But experienced marketers think differently. They understand that emotional pressure can distort decisions. So instead of reacting immediately, they slow the situation down enough to regain clarity first. They focus on stable signals. They avoid unnecessary changes. And step by step, they rebuild stability before chasing fast recovery. Because in real campaign crises, emotional control becomes part of performance control. And that is where real execution maturity begins. Now think about your own approach. Are you reacting emotionally when uncertainty increases? Or staying controlled long enough to make better decisions? So if you followed this series from the beginning, something important should feel very different now. At first, digital marketing interviews may have looked like simple question and answer sessions. But step by step, you started seeing the real difference between theory and execution. Because real marketing pressure is not only about running ads, it's about handling uncertainty, making decisions under pressure, and staying clear when situations become unstable. And that is where real confidence starts developing. Not from memorizing perfect answers, but from learning how to think clearly during imperfect situations. Because in real campaigns, performance changes. Clients become emotional. Pressure never fully disappears. But strong marketers learn how to stay controlled even when uncertainty increases. And over time, interviews stop feeling like tests. They start feeling like real business conversations. Because at that point, you are no longer trying to sound impressive. You are showing that you can handle real execution situations calmly and logically. And that is exactly what separates beginner thinking from advanced execution maturity. Now, if this series helped you understand digital marketing interviews differently, feel free to share it with someone preparing for interviews or trying to improve their execution thinking. Watch the previous parts, stay connected, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching!